Hey, what's up guys? It is Dan from FightWave, and today I'm joined by somebody who I've been dying to speak with for a second time since our first interview, the most successful interview on FightWave history, the man of the hour, the man who has everyone's name in his mouth, and the man who everyone has his name in their mouth, somebody who needs no further introduction, defeated the #1 contender at UFC 290 and is undeniably next for the middleweight title shot. I'm joined by Still Knocks himself, Dricus Du Plessis. How are we doing today, brother?
My man, good. Thanks yourself. Good. What an introduction. I love it.
Absolutely, Dricus. And the last time we spoke, obviously, was ahead of UFC 290, and so much has changed since then. Right now, we're talking right after UFC 293, a chaotic, main event to say the least, and one that you were eyeing exclusively. I want to ask you first and foremost, how's everything been, my brother? And obviously, what were your thoughts on the main event? Because it was a crazy main event to say the least.
Yeah, for me, everything's great. All my injuries have been cleared. Everything's been good. I mean, it's been a good 3 weeks of full speed training. Obviously training in a way that I can't be prepping for a fight because we don't know what's up. We don't know when this is happening. So we're keeping it around 70%, doing the work, getting better, getting there's always some craft to be just perfected. The room for error and the mistakes are so small that we are working on these minor adjustments to get me ready for being the champion of the world and for a very long time. So that's been going great. Life's been good. Life's been great. Everything. I have no complaints. And then, of course, the fight this weekend. I've been ready to address every situation of what might happen this weekend, and what the UFC might say, what Dana might say. And obviously, him not being very happy that I turned down a fight on 7 weeks' notice with an injury, which I don't really understand. But it's at the end of the day, it's business for them, and you got to respect that. But if I could look at my track record, I know for a fact that I'm not somebody that turns down fights if it's not a good enough reason. I've taken fights on short notice multiple times. Every time they phone, I say yes, let's go. This time around, it wasn't possible with the injury and short notice. But one thing I didn't prepare for was talking to you about Sean Strickland beating Adesanya. I honestly did not see that happening, and I'm happy for Sean Strickland. I'm happy that Izzy got a little bit of a hiding, although I would have loved to be the guy to give it to him. But there's Sean Strickland. Just goes to show. I feel he was in a very similar situation to me and Robert Whittaker, where nobody gave me a shot, nobody gave me a chance, and I know even Strickland didn't give me a chance, and I didn't give him a chance in this fight. So I mean, what to make of that? I mean, Strickland did what Strickland does. He fought the way he always fought. He fought a great fight. That's one thing you have to give to the guy. He came in and he stepped up to the moment, because he could have easily not showed up and lost that fight just purely because of the big moment in the BMT. And he showed up there and he made it look like he just fought another guy. Whereas Israel Adesanya looked, you could see it was easy fighting, but in my honest opinion, he can be so glad that he wasn't been there with me this weekend. That performance, his punches had no snap, no power. He was moving backwards the whole time with the kind of pressure that I fight at, and that's what Strickland did well. He kept pressure, and that was great. But if I wasn't there with him, especially in that first round with Strickland, it was game over. I think it would have been an absolute. I wouldn't. If he fought that way against me, I don't think the fight would see the second round, or at least definitely not the third. But Strickland did well. He stayed calm, he stayed composed, and he did a great job. His defense was on par. It was a great fight. It was a big shocker for the MMA world. Let me tell you that.
Absolutely, and obviously you mentioned the undermining of Sean Strickland, very similar and eerily reminiscent to obviously how people treated you against Robert Whittaker. The odds makers to the fans, everybody counted both of you guys out, and I think we're living in a timeline now where you really can't say anything until the fight gets to that point. But more importantly, I want to ask you, because much was made of, obviously, as you mentioned, Dana White talking about, he doesn't like guys who turn down fights, you obviously undergoing an injury and having to tend to that. I want to ask you, because there were some mixed comments. Obviously, Adesanya and Dana were like, oh, I don't know why he turned down this fight. But then you had somebody who, uncharacteristically, I would not have expected, Eugene Behrman actually went out and said, Dricus is next, Dricus is next. What do you make of these comments when obviously they're mentioning, oh, he's not next, he's next? What do you make of these comments when people are either undermining the performance against Whittaker for what it was or saying, oh, you're not next?
I don't see them as undermining the performance. What I see is they went, oh, I want to fight Dricus. If we could get this fight, they were talking a lot about this fight. And I honestly don't believe they thought I would get past Whittaker. I honestly believe they, So you want to tell me the whole world thought I would lose against Whittaker? Out of 32 pros they asked, 32 said Dricus is losing. Adesanya and his coach were the ones who think I was going to win. That doesn't make sense. Now, they honestly didn't think I would get through that, so it would have been a great build-up and to say, you couldn't even get past Whittaker. And I did it in better fashion than Izzy did. I did it faster than Izzy did. And I made it look easier than Izzy did. And then, of course, they didn't want to fight anymore, which made no sense just because, I was injured. I was clearly injured. We had all the medical records to prove it. Now, I was in a moon boot 3 weeks before the Whittaker fight. I was in a moon boot. The day before I flew out, I was in a moon boot. Couldn't put any weight on my foot. Didn't use that foot. Didn't even use it in the warm-up. Only used it in the fight. And, that's adrenaline for you. And there was nothing that's going to stop me from that fight. I was already, 3 weeks out. All the hard work's been done. I'm already fit. I'm already ready. Now it's just getting to the fight. And so, when they started with, I'm not getting the fight, it didn't make sense because what fight, how does that make sense? But right now, everything opened up. So Izzy went on to say, listen, I want to fight the winner. I would rather fight the winner of Paulo Costa versus Chimaev while his wish has been granted. Right now, what I think should happen is me and Strickland fight for the belt. And I honestly believe I am the guy. I'll beat Strickland, and I am going to beat Strickland. I'm going to be the world champion. And I'll fight the winner of Adesanya versus whoever wins the fight between Costa and Chimaev. Because he wanted that fight, now he can have that fight as a number one contender fight. Because, I spoke to a few people of my team this week and said, listen, I'm not the number one contender in the world to fight Adesanya. I'm number one contender in the world of MMA. I'm number one contender, meaning I fight whoever is at the top. This fight this was never about, it was never personal to me. I've never wanted to fight Adesanya. I wanted to fight him because he had the belt. Right now, Adesanya, he's out of the picture. I have I don't even have a thought about him. I am only thinking about Sean Strickland, the guy with the belt.
Absolutely, and obviously much is made of, you mentioned obviously the response there kind of goes into my next point. I was going to ask you, obviously there was the backstory and history with Adesanya stepping into the cage, obviously a lot made of the comments, and this whole build-up, honestly a big build-up for what would have been a massive clash of middleweight titans. But now that's kind of been set off course, partly due to the result on Saturday night. I want to ask you, just in terms of fighting Sean Strickland, a lot was made of the build-up to UFC 293. Obviously, I understand that you saw some of the comments that were probably going around about Adesanya, Strickland, a lot of build-up for that fight in terms of trash talk. I wanted to ask you what you kind of made of that trash talk in the build-up. Does that kind of change anything for you? Because obviously you mentioned you want to fight whoever's at the top, but was there anything that you made of specifically of what was being said during fight week, or was it just, every standard fight week just trying to sell the fight?
Yeah, I mean, the way I saw it, there were some funny parts. I enjoyed it. I enjoyed some of the talks and Strickland being Strickland. Adesanya was, I don't know, his fight week was a lot like his performance. It was dull, it was weak, I don't know, maybe something was wrong. I'm not sure what his story was, but Strickland was Strickland, and I enjoyed it, but I don't make anything of it. For me, it's there's a lot of talk, but at the end of the day, they were going to fight, and I enjoyed it. They tried to sell that fight as hard as they possibly could. Obviously, I don't know how good this pay-per-view did, to be honest. It wasn't the greatest fight card. I enjoyed the fights, but I don't think it was. No, it was a difficult card because all the big stars. I actually thought about that when we fought at UFC 290. That was, 7 weeks ago, and there was all the big Australian fighters were on that card, and I couldn't understand that. You had Volk, You could have had Volk on this card. You could have had Whittaker on this card. You could have had Adesanya and me on this card. And obviously the Whittaker fight needed to happen, but me and Whittaker would have been just as big on this card. So it was interesting to see that they almost expected all the stars that would be a great draw for pay-per-views in Australia was on the card that I fought on, and it was only 7 weeks ago. It was interesting to me. So I think a lot of the star power of this card almost fell off because of that fight night. The same as myself and Adesanya's fight that fell off because of that fight night. But for me, I think it's going to be interesting to see how the UFC approaches this, because what do you do? Do you give Adesanya a rematch? Because I don't see the point in that, to be honest. And obviously the UFC is going to do what the UFC does, and that is, they make the fights at the end of the day. It's their choice. They are the bosses. We just go out there and perform. We are there to entertain the people, but ultimately they make the decisions. So Adesanya, yes, he definitely deserved the rematch against Pereira, 100%. He was on a big roll. He defended his belt multiple times, and was winning a fight, got knocked out. Won the rematch. This was his first title defense as a champion again, and he failed. So does every champion from now on get it? And it wasn't a close fight, make no mistake. It wasn't like Strickland caught him. He was absolutely dominated. So does every champion who just won the belt on his first defense, loses the belt, get a rematch? Because right now, Izzy is 4-3 in his last 7 fights. That's 1 win, 1 loss, 1 win, 1 loss, 1 win, 1 loss. That doesn't justify a title shot rematch, immediate rematch for me at all. That justifies a number 1 contender fight, 100%, against the winner of Costa and Chimaev. But I honestly think it's time for the division to move on. And if he wants to get that belt back, let him fight somebody and earn his spot, earn that spot that he insisted that I earned after beating Whittaker.
Absolutely. I kind of agree with the point you mentioned. Obviously, UFC 290, they stacked a lot of the Australian talent, and it didn't really make sense from that standpoint. But looking at the results from UFC 290, obviously you amassed a large fan base from your performance against Robert Whittaker, turned a lot of doubters into fans. You got a lot of fans off the performance, and rightfully so. When you eliminate a number 1 contender in the fashion that you did, that garners respect across every fan base imaginable. I want to ask you, just in terms of seeing the support and seeing your stock grow amongst the fan base, where do you put that and rank that in terms of becoming a superstar in this sport? Because every time I've spoken to a South African, your name is the number 1 name that comes up. You've become synonymous with South Africa and the culture over there. So I guess I want to ask you a 2-parter. 1, what does it mean to get that support from South Africa and have that backing even after putting on the ultimate statement against Robert Whittaker? And 2, what do you make of this newfound, support, from the fan base, and how do you carry that into a title fight against Strickland? What would that look like?
Yeah, it's been absolutely amazing. South Africa, we are proud people, very proud people, and especially when it comes to sport. The Rugby World Cups is full go. We played our first match last night, gave Scotland a nice little hiding, and then of course, basically just 2 weeks ago, we played New Zealand, and it was interesting. We gave New Zealand the biggest hiding in the history of rugby. We gave them such a hiding, and I was like, universe has spoken. And unfortunately, Strickland was the one to do that to Adesanya, not me. But we as sports fans right now, me and the Springboks, our national rugby team, are so aligned. We share the same values, we share the same sentiment of we want to prove to the world what we are capable of, and prove all the doubters wrong. Not really, but prove the people that believe in us right. And it's been absolutely amazing. Everywhere I go, especially here in South Africa, the fans are amazing. The fans are everywhere. The people took note, and the people, obviously I had to prove the fans right. I had to prove the people that kind of believed in me right, and I did that. And I carried the flag, and like I said, we are proud people, and it was the coolest moment of my life to go out there and put on a performance like I did against Whittaker and put my country, my continent, and my people on the map for just in the way that I did, and saying this is what we're going to do. We went out, we did it, and it's been absolutely amazing. And carrying that into a title fight against Strickland, it changes the whole dynamic, because against Adesanya, this would have been probably one of the biggest fights in the history of the sport. I honestly believe so. And right now, Strickland, I really, really hope Adesanya, it works out the way that I fight Strickland, win that bout, and defend it against Adesanya right here on home soil. And that's the message I want to get across. I want to win that bout, come home, defend that bout right here on home soil. And that would be history made for the first African event. And I am 100% sure it would probably be the biggest event in the history of sports. I think this is a monumental moment. You know, this is a rumble in the jungle. This is especially for the UFC, this is something they've been wanting to do. And we have the facilities to, 100% we have the facilities to facilitate that event. You know, we've been speaking to the right people. Everything is possible, just as the UFC would want it.
Absolutely, and I love what you mentioned, you know, kind of being in tangent and aligned with the Springboks. Obviously, UFC 290 weekend was South Africa, I think, coming out party in terms of sports across the world. You guys beat Australia in rugby. You had the sweep, you and Cameron. And then more importantly, South African MMA right now. You know, a name that's going around CIT, Mark Hume, UAE Warriors. He looked absolutely phenomenal there. And then obviously you had Chad Hannekom fight for a contract on the Contender Series a week or two ago. You know, right now South Africa MMA is absolutely booming. And I agree with you. The facilities are there in South Africa. It's undergone such an enormous upheaval and improvement across all sports that I think an event like Adesanya mentioned, there was a question that somebody asked about, you know, UFC 300, would you want to fight on that? It kind of seems like if you and Strickland fight and that belt comes home to South Africa, Dricus Du Plessis on UFC 300, if that possibility presents itself, would break records, it would break headlines, and it would be a testament to everything that South African MMA is building. So I guess just to piggyback off the question presented by FTS MMA to Adesanya, what would it mean for you to possibly bring a title fight, UFC 300, but also just a title fight in general, to South Africa against anyone in the middleweight division? And is there a name in specific you would want to face in South Africa, aside from Adesanya?
You know, that is when Adesanya said he wants to do UFC 300, I immediately started making my calculation on to win, and I think that would be April next year. And by April next year, we will be ready. South Africa will be ready to host that event. And the UFC has been very outspoken on how badly they want Africa. They want the Africa event. It's the only continent they haven't been. And, you know, there's been other organizations in Africa. The UFC has been all over. It's the pinnacle of the sport. And, you know, it's more than enough time for April next year to do UFC 300. And you have to make your 200, your UFC 100 was, I mean, it was it's still in the top 5 of pay-per-views. I think it was Brock Lesnar who fought. And then UFC 200, it was just as big with Conor. And then you have UFC 300. And you have to do that something special. You have to do something special. Not only the lights, not only the show, not only the fights, but something special. And Africa, South Africa, is that something special? And, you know, as to answer your question to who I would like to fight, it honestly does not matter. As long as I have that belt and I can defend it on my home soil, that is the pinnacle of my sport. That's the pinnacle of my career thus far. And, you know, that's history for South Africa, history for the UFC, and history for me.
Absolutely. And I love what you mentioned in terms of ushering in the new era, bringing, you know, MMA to new heights, unprecedented heights, and fighting on an event like UFC 300 cements yourself amongst MMA greatness and amongst the legacy of the sport. Ultimately, I think as fighters, we see a lot of fighters wanting to set a strong example. And I think you yourself have been very outspoken of how a champion should conduct himself. You spoke very highly of Robert Whittaker in terms of the values that he upholds and in terms of the way that he carries himself. But obviously, you shared a very different opinion for Israel Adesanya and how he carries himself. And much was to be made of, obviously, the interaction that happened in that octagon. Kind of just to piggyback for a moment, what was your thoughts when he stepped into that octagon and tried to almost, you know, sell a fight? But more importantly, what were your thoughts on his behavior and mannerisms when he was standing aside from you?
Yeah, I mean, for him, as far as going to say, listen, you want to sell a fight, for me, that was great. You know, that was signed, sealed. Yes, here we go. You know, a lot of people said he tried to steal my shine. Maybe he tried, but he only made more light shine on me, and he stole a lot of his own shine. For me, that was, it was it. I didn't 100% know he was going to get in there. I assumed maybe, and the way he conducted himself, I just realized, especially when you look at a guy like Adesanya, who's always in control. He's always very calculated in what he says, how he says it. Every fight almost has a theme in terms of the build-up, the media, the press conference. How he works it out to a T. Even after he wins, he has his. He has this whole theatrical performance that he plans out from happening, the build up to the fight, the press conference, and actually after the fight. And that, when he walked into that cage, he was rattled. I could see it. And, you always put a champ in the UFC on a pedestal. I'm talking about myself coming up from EFC. Now you look at this guy, Adesanya, he's the pinnacle of the sport, and I start climbing. And as I start climbing, get more confidence, and I start seeing myself being on his level, getting closer to his level, and finally being better than him. And beating Robert Whittaker in prime, if you look at his past performances, his past 3-4 performances. And I beat him in more spectacular fashion. And now I know I'm on that level. I'm going to fight for the world title. And Adesanya gets into the cage, knew he was going to do that, wanted to do that. And he fumbled the ball so badly with that interaction that I immediately realized this guy can be rattled. He was rattled when he got in there, and I felt invincible in there because I just knocked out Robert Whittaker. So you can only imagine the confidence booming. He gets in there and starts completely out of control, screaming racial slurs, completely just, getting words wrong, talking about 36 or 33 and me, and he started just fumbling the ball over the place. And that's why I turned around and walked away, because there was nothing left to be said. It was written in the stone. It was done. I won the exchange. I won the battle. He was so rattled, and I just thought this was the best thing that could have happened, because in the environment that we are supposed to fight in, I just owned him. And that's one thing he does. He's always a big talk. He always loves to, like I said, be calculated in what he says and make people look dumb. And he just did that to himself. He just hanged himself in the end. Like, that's why I didn't really have anything much left to say to him, because he did it all to himself. But it was interesting to see. Like I said, a champion needs to conduct himself. He has a lot of followers. He has a lot of people looking up to him in the world. And by no means are we we are not your conventional sports people that needs to, be in a straight line the whole time. We are fighters at the end of the day. We are a little bit crazy. All fighters are. So you can expect us to go out and party and get a little wild and, get into a little bit of trouble. That's how fighters are. And by no means am I saying that's not supposed to happen. But what I am saying is, when it comes to sport and uplifting the sport of MMA and uplifting people in the world, he was somebody that preached unity so much. And he said Dricus was trying to create divide. I was never trying to create divide. And I never created divide. He created divide that night when on the biggest stage in the world, on a sport that we worked so hard, all of us, to get to where it is today, having a good image in the sport. And he, with racial slurs, tried to divide a sport. And not only does it belong in that octagon, it belongs nowhere in the world. And that was the message. That was what I got from him, looking at him and thinking, so many people are watching this. And yes, some people are going to back him and some people are going to back me. And he lost a lot of fans that night. You better believe that. But he also had so many people seeing what people might think is cool. And people might think, oh, this is a guy. This guy is, this is the champion of the world. And share his opinions. Imagine what world that would be. That doesn't belong in the world. It doesn't belong in sports, and it doesn't belong anywhere near me.
Absolutely beautifully put, Dricus. And more importantly, I think you hit the nail on the head. In a sport where we're fighting for bits and pieces just to be recognized amongst the other sport, you mentioned it beautifully. Obviously, fighters are not perfect. There's a little bit of crazy that goes into stepping into that octagon each and every time. But it's about how we set an example, and more importantly, that's not the example that we want to be setting for the next generation, and that's not the example that we want to set for people looking to tune into the sport. And I think you handled it with absolute class personally, from a personal opinion. And more importantly, I think that you embody everything that is what we recognize and associate with a true martial artist. In a day and age where obviously the sport is evolving every day, we see people setting a strong example, and you've gone out there and said time and time again, your number one fear is being average. And in a sport where being average means absolutely nothing, you've gone out and shown that you can become legendary in the process of seeking to become above average. So I want to ask you, just on a personal note, when you were at that standstill from deciding whether to go rugby or MMA, what did it mean to you to step into MMA, and how do you feel like this journey of searching for greatness has benefited you as a human being and as a person overall, just to the people around you?
Yeah, making a big life decision like that at the age of, 18, 19, you don't know anything about life. You don't know anything. You think you know because, but at the age of 18, 19, you don't really know anything. So making an important life decision like that was hard, but I speak about it quite often. It was the best decision that I've ever made in my life, and it could have been gone either way. But how I made that decision was easy. I just thought about which one of these journeys will I be able to completely cut out. Say, I'll never play a rugby game in my life, or I can never fight a fight again in my life. And that decision was easy for me because fighting is my passion. Fighting is the thing I love most in the world. And I made the decision to go that route. And even though in terms of financially and opportunistic and just what the future holds, that was the craziest decision ever, because what was the future? There was no platform. There was no future. We had to create that future. And we went out and we did it, and it made me so much more proud because I've done what no man in South Africa has done before. I've been a pioneer. I've been creating history time and time again. And that's not to boast. That's just how proud I am of my journey, and the people around me that motivate me and stood with me and helped me, that are still with me, and the fans and the South Africans. We as a country, we as a team CRT, we created this, and look at where we are. And it's the road less traveled, and it's been absolutely amazing, and I'm loving every second. And if I can tell young Dricus Du Plessis anything, if there's anything I can even go back to 14-year-old, 15-year-old me, it would be to do the exact same thing. Don't change a thing, because I'm loving it.
And I mean, absolutely beautifully put. And in the words of the late Kobe Bryant, be legendary. And Dricus Du Plessis, you continue to defy the odds. You continue to do remarkable things in the octagon. And I look forward to watching you fight for that world championship very soon. It's been an absolute honor and privilege to speak with you, my friend. And I know that we'll be seeing Ann New potentially come the end of this year. It's written in the stars that Dricus Du Plessis is going to change South African MMA and usher in the new era of mixed martial arts, hopefully. So I want to ask you, just on a final note, any message to the supporters at home? I gotta ask you, just in terms of what you got for the fans at home, for the MMA community, and more importantly for the rest of the middleweight division, as Still Knox is ready to, prove all of them that he is the number one domino.
Listen, one message to the South African fans: I love you all extremely much. No, South Africa, you should be here. You wouldn't believe it if you get to everywhere I go. People are just, they are so proud of me, and I'm so proud to represent them. It's amazing, and thank you. All over the world, people are starting to take note, and I appreciate that. Fans from all over the world. It's incredible. For me, South African, in our small gym right here in Pretoria, getting that international recognition. It means the world to me, and the rest of the division. I told you 2 years ago, better watch out. There is a new name coming, and here I am. I've arrived. I am the number one contender in the world right now. And you can run, you can't hide. Izzy tried to run, didn't even hide. The first corner he tried to hide was Sean Strickland. And right now, Sean Strickland is my new target, and I'm coming for that belt. And whoever gets in my way to that belt, I've taken out everybody, and I'm ready to be champion. I'm ready to take that belt and be a reigning champion for a very long time. And I can't wait to prove the world. Those who still don't believe, you better start believing. If not, those who do believe, thank you. and I can't wait to bring that belt home.
Absolutely, and I know we're all waiting to see you fight for middleweight gold and your hopes to usher in the Still Knox era of the UFC Middleweight Division. Thank you so much for your time, Dricus. It's been an honor and privilege to speak with you once again, and I look forward to many future chats. As you mentioned, hopefully the next one, who knows, maybe we'll be doing it in South Africa next year come this time. It would be an honor and privilege for me. And to the fans at home watching, do be sure to check out Dricus on social media. In my opinion, get behind your local fighters, support them, do everything in your power you can to support them. When people like Dricus are making a name for nations, it's no excuse for you guys to go out and support your local pro or amateur. It's been me, Dan, from FightWave, guys. It's been an honor and privilege to speak to a possible future middleweight champion. I have no doubt in my mind that Dricus Du Plessis will continue to shock us all. Have a great day, guys, and it's been FightWave. Join the wave.